right, welcome. It's the cast of characters watch party. We're listening to a previous album just to get us warmed up. This is cast of characters. This is the record. Came out way back in what seems like a long time ago, I guess now, but it was February 28th, 2020, and I'm really excited. It's probably the batch of music that I'm most proud of composing, and I think that the band did an amazing job of bringing the music to life, and I just want to share it with you. And we have video evidence of the whole session, and we're going to watch that together tonight and just kind of hang out. Please drop some stuff in the chat, say hello, let me know you're here, and let me know what you think of these videos and the record. I want to hear from you all night, and I'll be able to bring your chats right into the session here, so I'll be able to see who's here and see who is participating. So as you can see, we've got some of the characters, getting this backwards, hanging out on screen with us today. And I wanted to take a minute to say why we're doing this. It was basically here I just put up on the screen the original tour schedule that we had for the record, but obviously the world had other plans for us, so that didn't happen quite as it looks right there. We made it we made it to 313. We did that, and then that was it. That was the end of it. And hey PJ, thanks for being here. Hey Tyler, thanks for being here. Glad you can be here. Yeah, we made it to 313. What's up, John J. Robertson from Warren, Michigan? Very, very nice. Let us know where we're watching from tonight. We'd love to see where everyone is from in the chat. And so 313, Reno, University of Reno, big thanks to Josh Reed, who is a new professor out there, a friend of mine from Eastman, and we ended up having a masterclass, and that was the end of the tour. We did the masterclass, and I was on the road with Lucas Pino, great tenor player who's on the record, and then that was it. We decided to call it quits and come and go back to New York, and I came back to Texas in order to teach at UNT, finish out the semester, and that was it. The rest of the tour never happened. We missed out on a really fun couple of gigs that would have been at Birdland and at the Side Door and in Nashville, but we will get them back on the schedule, so do not worry. Eventually, when all this clears, we will be back for more. Hi from Toronto, in the hills of Tennessee, Kent, Ohio, amazing, Dallas. Hey John, hey Luis, glad you all could be here. Miami, Ottawa, everybody, all over the place. And so I'm really glad that you can be here tonight. So the first thing that I want to do before we watch anything, check out any music, is I'd love it if you could take 2 seconds while you're doing this and share it in your Facebook, on your Twitter, anywhere that you can share it. Share the link to this YouTube video so we can get as many people as we can to watch tonight live. And I'm going to pick 5 people and send them a hard copy of the CD for reposting the link. So repost the link and tag me in it, either at Nick Finzer on Twitter or at Nick Finzer on Facebook, or send me a screenshot of you doing it, and you'll be entered to win one of these 5 CDs, and we'll mail that out to you tomorrow, I would think, or very shortly thereafter. So please take a minute and do that. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about, and why I'm really glad you're here on the stream, other than the music, of course, is that we have, we'll get rid of this poster here. There we go. Get rid of the poster. But tonight only during the stream, if you've been meaning to get your own copy of the record, we have an exclusive 25% off discount code. If you're trying to buy something, if you've been thinking about it, now might be the time. So head on over there, nickfinzer.store, new URL as well. And you can check those things out. But without further ado, let's get to some music. And so this whole record was composed almost in the entire, sorry, somebody said, I can't hear anything. I think other people can hear though. I see that audio is going out. Maybe you're muted, Daniel, but the audio seems to be going out from here. But so the whole record was put together with the idea of making individually digestible pieces and a whole suite of music that could be listened to without interruption. So you can consume the music both ways. And So tonight we're going to kind of do a straight through, not really. I mean, we're going to stop and we're going to talk and ask questions and everything. So there's going to be back and forth and stopping and starting. But after this week, next week on YouTube, I'm going to post a full version all the way through so people can watch uninterrupted. Spotify doesn't let you put up one long track, and YouTube only YouTube will allow me to do that. So, hey, Ryan Truesdale is here. And my favorite part about this new software that I got for live streaming is being able to put people up on the broadcast. So here we go. Say from Quebec, ECL is here. Ryan Truesdale is here. Ryan Truesdale was the producer of the record. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for all your help over the years. Really means a lot. And okay, so what I want to do is introduce you to the main theme of this whole record. So check it out. I'm going to pull up this video and I'm going to stop it. Okay, so that, just so you know, is the whole record. If you want it to be really investigative, I suppose, you could go in and you could listen to that and see how it gets twisted and turned around. But it's that first opening statement in the piano. That's the entire record. And it was the source inspiration, musically speaking, of how we got 11 tracks worth of music. So I just wanted to point that out before we went any further into it. So you could start to hear how that's twisted and combined and moved all over the place to be there. So we are going to get into this recording. I'll be here and I'll kind of probably jump in to make some comments about things on this. And feel free to drop in any questions as we go along, as things pop up in your mind, or you're wondering how something happened, and we'll check back in here in just a minute. So here comes the very first tune. This is called "A Sorcerer is a Myth," and the reason that we call it that, I'll go more into the details of everything about the record after we watch some music. I don't want to just talk for too long, but the whole idea of the record is meeting people along your life's journey and how they affect you and how they change the path and how they reinforce the path and all these different kinds of things. And so "A Sorcerer is a Myth" is like this person that inspired you to go along on the journey that you've started. So as a musician, maybe it's a musician whose level is so high when you're young that you're so inspired by this person. So as you go along the path, you start to realize it's like this person, this sorcerer that's doing this magical musical stuff is actually just someone that's worked really hard on their craft. And that's it's a myth part. So I'm going to read you more from the liner notes, and we're going to dig into the liner notes and some other things after this track. But I just want to get to some music. It's already been 8 minutes of me talking. So here we go. Here's "A Sorcerer is a Myth," and just listen to see how that first opening statement is carried through the tune and the whole record. So here we go. See, Alex is counting really, really hard. As we wrote this piece, this part has a lot of intermingled rhythms. 4/4 actually. It's just that cycle of that figure. Solo coming up from Lucas is probably my favorite moment on the whole record. So now you can hear we're in 5/4, and it's kind of flip. It's all the 3s and 2s that we've been hearing since the beginning. Talk. so that's, yeah, when you play that one live, it's explosive. It's just, man, like when the band really gets into it. Yeah, that's the Bunker Studio in Brooklyn, and the masterful engineer Aaron Navisi, who works there. He's one of the owners of that studio. I said Luis is commenting about the sound quality, and yeah, we've recorded most of the records. There are 3 of the 5 records from the band. This is the 5th record. This cast of characters is the 5th record from the band. And if you don't know who's in the band, you got to see them musically and get to know them musically. But that's Lucas Pino on the tenor saxophone and bass clarinet. He plays on some other tracks. Alex Wintz on the guitar, Glenn Zaleski at the piano, Jimmy McBride on the drums, and Dave Barron on the bass. And yeah, they have been the same cast of characters for the last several records. But yeah, that just gets me going every time. So it's really exciting. It's just, yeah. So you can hear how that tune is kind of bookended by that idea. And I want to show some of the album artwork before, if you haven't seen it yet. You might already have a copy if you're in here, but let's see. So I'm going to, yeah, there we go. So that's the main page of it. But if we scroll through, you can kind of read kind of what I was thinking. I'll just read it to you if it's too small to read, about the CD, about the kind of overarching themes that are throughout. So it says, each of us responds and develops along our journey with the influence of the people we meet along our path. We follow, we depart, we react, and we grow in myriad ways based on the experiences we encounter. And then you can see some of these, the journey tracks that are in addition to the cast of characters. But if you just look to the right and say, our expectations of reality are often met with a different truth. We laugh, we cry, we celebrate, we learn, and we forge our own path on the shoulders of those who came before us. We are both the sum of our experience and the product of our influences. We are who we choose to embrace. And so what I'm kind of getting at with all of that is just that, it's not just the people we meet, it's how it comes into contact and influences our being and our goals and our trajectory. And I think like that, the reason that exciting first tune is to get us, revved up and to get us going. And that's the inspirational moment. And then we move to the next tune, which is called Evolution of Perspective. This is you, trying to learn more about the art form. This is you going down a path of, it's like this never ending path, really, as a jazz musician, any musician, just learning anything, you're just a never ending educating of yourself and digging deeper, trying to unearth more layers and just understand more about the art form. And so that leads us to this one, which is the Evolution of Perspective. Now on the CD, which I like better about having this video and having this one seamless track, is that it's in 2 parts. It says intro to, and then Evolution of Perspective, but really it's just Evolution of Perspective. And it's the whole idea of this whole thing together. So now that you've heard the end, think about that thing that we just heard, that bling, ding, 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 ding. That little figure is going to open up in a different order for the next tune. So this is like a transitional moment. If you were watching this all in real time, you would hear the end of that tune. It would bleed right into the beginning of this tune, this Evolution of Perspective. And I just got to pull it up here, choose file, video. So here it comes. So it's the same idea, but it's twisted around in a different way. The notes are in a different order. Now it moves to the horns. Again from that first intro, just over this new setting. You can see the band looking around because I'm kind of cueing all of this. evolved and we have this new bass line. Similar shapes on top again. It's actually the same stuff for that intro that we talked about. Hopefully you caught the transition there with the use of that same figure again that's from the intro that's developed from the other intro. So I really did try to tie these all together, so now when you're listening to them you can maybe hear some of these things. There's a couple comments during that tune that I wanted to just mention, and somebody said, I think John said this was the tune with the transcription that was in downbeat. And yeah, so I wrote an article for downbeat about improvising in the oeuvre of the tune, in the character basically of the tune, not to use the same word over and over, but and so in that article we talked about using bits and pieces of the melody and how the whole record was built on these two triads. That's that opening idea that you heard on the piano, and how you take that and try to use it as the basis and genesis of the improvisation later on. So that article was about that. So that transcription's there in downbeat if you wanted to check it. And how much rehearsal? This is a question that came in a couple times. How much rehearsal? We did like maybe 1 or 2 reading sessions of some of the music. And then we had one, I forget if we had 2 gigs. We might have played at Smalls and at the Side Door, or we just played at the Side Door in Connecticut, which is a great venue in Old Lyme, Connecticut, which we were supposed to play on the CD release tour, but it didn't end up happening. But we did, so yeah, a couple rehearsals and then the session. But we've been playing together since 2010. I mean, basically it's the similar band to when I was doing my master's at Juilliard. I mean, I've been playing with Dave even longer, and Jimmy since 2010, and Lucas since 2010. And so we kind of have, this band kind of has a synergy from doing that. And a lot of us also play in Lucas's nonet. And somebody pointed out that this one of these tunes, Tyler pointed out that it kind of reminded him of one of Lucas's tunes called The World Ahead. And it definitely has some similarities to that. And I think it's inescapable for me to say that I'm not influenced by being in that band and playing Lucas's music. So yeah, there was a couple takes of each tune. You know, we didn't do everything one time and it was done. We did everything at least twice, but a lot of the times it was the first take. You know, it wasn't. We didn't take too much time to do a million takes, because it's always usually the first take, or maybe the second take if there was something really hard. It's the energy, you know, with acoustic jazz music, like it's all about the vibe and the energy to me, and so that's that. But moving along here to our next track, this Brutus the Contemporary. I'll show you Brutus Brutus is up on the top right-hand corner of the screen. He's the upside down. It's Brutus, the Caesar Brutus, and I'm going to read you a little bit of what I wrote about Brutus. So I didn't write anything. Oh, there it is. Okay, so for Brutus, this is what we had to say when we were putting together press about the record. So along our life path, we often make friends who change. We all change. But sometimes that person changes from friend to foe, from ally to enemy. It happened from the time of Julius Caesar, and it continues to this day. It's just part of human nature. And in this tune, we kind of pit Lucas Pino against the rest of the band, and I guess me, not that we're like fighting or anything for real, but trying to portray different feelings of the same, that are of the same person, you know. So it's difficult to really put it into a sentence that makes cohesive sense, but hopefully you can get the idea from the tune that it's about this person or some person in your life that you've run across that has been two-faced to you, that has changed their story, has changed their tune along the way. And I think we all know somebody like that. I don't think you can go through life and not encounter people that are like that. And so this is that person along your path. It's not a particular person. None of these are supposed to be particular people. Well, some of them are, but it's supposed to be about the idea of that person, the archetype of that person. And so that you can think about, while this music is playing, you can think about that person to you. Like, who is that person that was Two-Face, and who is that person that inspired you? And so I hope that this music will, be able to let you escape and think about, some of those things from your own life and from people and things of that nature. So we're going to dive in here to Brutus. This is Brutus the Contemporary, and I'm just going to pull up the video here, and then we'll jump right in. And I see some questions in the chat, and I'll be in the chat, so feel free to go ahead and drop more questions in the chat. And if you haven't already, share the link out so that we can get this spread far and wide. We'll be giving away some CDs after the stream. So here we go. Here's Brutus the Contemporary. First time we're getting this kind of back and forth with those two, that same person. It's the same tune, but it's a totally different kind of feel. We switch back. Here again, that same triad. This. And now we change moods again. super detailed in. This is like more of that development of those composition techniques. Yeah. So that's Brutus. Some good questions coming in on the chat I wanted to get to. Nick Marshall, he said, when prepping for this recording, did you let the band in on these messages behind the tunes, or were these something that you came up with after? I came up with the story kind of along with the music and the compositions, and I actually got the like all of the characters and everything drawn up first before we even ever played the music. So sometimes it's the case that I come up with a story afterwards, and that's definitely true. It's of something that I've done of my tunes, is figure out like, how does this fit into a narrative or something like that, or what is this really about? And you have to think about it a lot. But this was like totally different for me as the composer, coming and thinking about it all the way from the beginning as this narrative thread and this idea. But I usually don't let the band in on it, because they get they get sidetracked by the story. I just want to check out the music and play as good as they can and give enough energy and bring it to life. And I want them to I want the audience to bring their own experience into it. I want the band to do the same. So if I give them too much detail, they're going to try to be like, well, what does Nick want? What does Nick want? How does Nick want this played? Or blah, 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 blah. And I really just want them to be them. So if I give them too much information, sometimes I think it's detrimental, really. So I try to stay out of the way. Try to give them the information that they need, and we go on our way. And then they learn about it. They learn the stories to the tunes kind of, afterwards for sure. And then, let's see, dumb non-musician question from FreeCloud11. Thanks for being here. Appreciate that. How do you get up and energize in the studio? It really comes across here. I don't know. You just get excited for that day in the studio. It's always great to be in the studio. We're all friends, so it's like a fun hang. And, you have a great producer like Ryan Truesdell, who can keep things organized, keep things moving, and it's great. So thanks, PJ. Glad you liked the tune. Hey, Chris. Thanks, Dr. B. Dr. B, I got your question. I'm going to answer it tomorrow during our Q&A session. And thank you, Nathan. I'm glad you enjoyed some of those. Edwin. Oh, man, that's so nice of you. I'm glad you've been enjoying the music. And I'm glad you all are here. And I'm glad to share this music. It's good to be able to tell the stories, and they should come to the watch party. Maybe they'll show up. I don't have any money for the band, so this is they'll have to come and jump on. But it's always fun, to get into the studio and to play music with great musicians. So, like I said, I don't tell them the whole story. Yeah, Ryan's trying to defend himself, but he's saying we did all the hard work. But no, he did it. He's like the herder of cats, trying to get all the musicians in the same room to do the same thing. He's really an expert producer. So, John Robertson, with a motif running through the music in a live performance, do you plan these tunes in order? Well, I tried to, create them so they could be individually digestible, maybe not with the introductions on them. We've played some of them, like when we were on the road, we were playing some of these tunes. Some of them are a little too hard when you don't have the full band. We would pick up a local rhythm section a lot of times and play, and so we would pick different pieces of the pieces, if that makes sense. So we might leave out certain parts and things of that nature. But I try to fit them into the set. We try to play music from all the records. We did a set of all the music. Like, it would be too long, first of all, if we let the band open up and play all the way through. So it doesn't work totally as a short set. But if we did one concert set, we could do the whole record, which is something I'd love to do. But we got to get back to playing gigs first, and then I'll figure out how we can play a show where we can do the whole record straight through. It would probably be like a 90-minute or 2-hour set or something like that. But yeah, thanks, Jared. Glad you enjoyed the hookup. The band is killing, I think. Sorry, jazz parlance here. Great. So before I get too much bogged down in talking about how I love my band, I'm going to move on to something that I struggle with, the next tune on the record, and it's called Patience, Patience. So sometimes we get impatient as young artists, as young people, to try to make stuff happen. And that, anyone that knows me knows that that's very much part of my personality, that kind of whatever that is, that drive forward. And I just wanted to give the band a chance to reflect. And, it's partially part of my personal journey of trying to realize that about myself, and how do I change that, and how do I embrace it, make the best of it. And so this tune is called Patience. Patience is a great intro by Glenn. It's kind of split up on the record itself and on Spotify, but here we have it fully in video form all the way together. And I really love how it flows, and Glenn plays beautifully, so beautifully on this. And the whole band kind of plays together. We get to feature Dave Barron for the first time on the record, and so I'll be in the chat while we watch this. This is called Patience, Patience. just the balance between what was written and what was not written and what was improvised. It's a pretty magical thing when you let the band do their thing and not get in the way. That sometimes as a composer, we tend to overwrite sometimes, but sometimes also underwrite. But for me, just letting the band take that little idea, the little theme, and just like, all right, here we go. Let's see what happens. We're going to play. And then there's some parts that were cued. And I'm so glad to hear that it's coming through really well with the streaming. And if you haven't checked out the record yet, you can find it in all the places. It's all on YouTube. You can find these pieces. And then I'm going to post it up next week all strung together. So if you want to watch it all strung together without me yapping in between, you can do that as well. Hey, Dana. Oh, man, he's just practicing my book. That's amazing. Masahira, thank you. Oh, yes. I'm so glad to hear you guys are enjoying the music. The next tune on the record is, of course, a Duke. And I can't really say that it's not about Duke Ellington because, of course, Duke is a huge inspiration for me. He was the person that got me into playing jazz music. I wanted to be a classical musician, and then I played the music of Duke Ellington in a big band in high school. We went to New York, and I got to be in New York for the first time and experience jazz in that environment. And it was that was it. That was what kind of transported me into wanting to do that and be that in life. So that was what we did, and that's what inspired me to do it. So Duke's music, you could hear Single Petal of a Rose from a couple records ago, Pyramid on the last record from No Arrival. There's been Duke Ellington stuff all over my records all the way since the beginning, and I always try to incorporate that whenever possible. And just the connection, I've gotten to play with the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, and my first teacher was Wycliffe Gordon, first jazz teacher, and he was in that group. And I don't know, it's just an inescapable Duke Ellington connection. And so this tune is there's a couple little compositional nods to some of Duke's tunes. The bridge is kind of like Satin Doll, the changes, not the melody, but so I wanted to take that inspiration of just like some jumping off points from Duke that would be super subtle that people wouldn't notice unless they were really digging for it. So they'd actually have to be looking for these connections. And then taking that and combining it with the stuff from this record. So meaning that opening statement, there's an interesting interval and relationship in major thirds that John Coltrane started to explore. And so I decided I wanted to kind of combine all those things together into this piece. And so there's kind of a lot of all these different compositional elements kind of put together here. And so this is going to be a Duke. And I'm going to pull it up here. And so obviously it is for Duke Ellington. Most of the pieces, like I said on the record, are not about a particular person. And it's not about Duke in particular. It's about the inspiration that he provided me. And I hope that, I think that's such requirement. Somebody has to inspire you to want to do this thing and follow this path, this crazy life, this music life and artistic life. So, I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll be in the chat during it, and we'll see you on the other side. Maybe I'll jump in and say a couple of things, but here we go with a Duke. That's so slick, man.
One of these future tracks, you'll hear the same intro material again, just to add to that, if you're listening for it. And then this bridge was supposed to feel like a monk kind of thing, or flamenco or something. Give the drummer some. So that's a Duke, and so I'm gonna just scroll back here on the screen just for a second, because there was a question about the mic setup, and so I'll just quickly kind of talk about this microphone that's in front of me that's hanging there. That's the Coles 4038, and that's the main microphone. But we put other microphones to like talk in the studio so people can hear each other. So like all of these microphones aren't happening. Mostly what you're hearing is the one black one that's in front of me. There's multiple microphones on Lucas because he's doing tenor and bass clarinet, and we don't want to have to reset up all the time. And the studio just keeps a whole bunch of stuff in the drum room. So it looks like there's like a crazy amount of microphones, but really it's just a normal amount. But yeah, that's the microphone that I like to use, the Coles 4038 in the studio. And yeah, that's a Duke. And so, yeah, I always think it's fun, and a lot of people seem to like it. And it's kind of a good blend of, you know, traditional swinging straight ahead jazz and Duke Ellington and Monk and just fun harmonies. And so it's a lot of things rolled into one. And so that's, it's a fan favorite, it seems like, when I've been on the road in Palm Springs. I know that you liked that one. And then in other cities as well, Denver, people really liked a Duke as well. And so from that, you know, from that person, that moment of inspiration that Duke is for me, you kind of at some point come to a crossroads where you need to make a decision about whether you're going to really do this for real or not. And I think sometimes that comes maybe when you're going to college, or you finish going to college, maybe you're going to go for more school, or you're going to move to a city to try to make it happen. And for me, I tried to encapsulate that feeling, that kind of anxiety, that excitement, all of that rolled into one piece. And so we came up with this tune called Take the Fork in the Road. And the first person I talked to about all of this was like, oh, that's like Take the A Train. It's like a play on Take the A Train. And I never put it together, but putting it right after a Duke, it kind of makes sense. But really I was thinking about, you know, the classic Robert Frost poem of taking the road less traveled, you know, and taking the fork in the road. So I'm going to just get you right into this one. It's a short little part of the journey, not one of the character pieces, but it's one of the pieces that is inside of on that panel of the artwork that said the journey. And this is part of that. This is like that development between people, where you evolve in the way you think about things. So I'm going to pull this up so you can hear. We put some kind of different effects on the video and the audio to try to encapsulate that feeling of uncertainty. And it's a totally different groove than anything else on the record. So we put it all in black and white, try to create some more drama, filter on all the music, so it sounds like, where is that coming from? So short and sweet, and it kind of gives that vibe. And if you notice from the beginning, it's actually the same. If you go back and listen to it again, it's the same music the whole time, the same 4 bars, but the way that we kind of orchestrated where the improvisation is and where the different instruments kind of overlap and start and stop. It started with guitar and then piano, and then eventually it ended up just with trombone and drums. And it was a chance for Jimmy to kind of show off some of his chops. And musicality. And anyone who's been with me for a long time knows that every once in a while I got to write a tune that has a groove like that. My friends from college will know that that's not the first time I've written something that sounds sort of like that. But the next tune on the record is one that is called The Weatherman. Back to our characters here. And so the Weatherman, to me, embodies a person that always has that positive energy, and it relates to a person in my life, and that was my grandfather. He was a meteorologist for the Navy, actually, and when I was a kid growing up, he would show me these old videos of like when he was in the Navy, obviously, of traveling to places like the Antarctic and the North Pole and like icebreakers and like all this crazy stuff, and I just thought it was like so interesting, and I just couldn't imagine what that must have been like. And so anyway, for him, he was always a person that was positive, and he was a person that always had a jolly laugh. You know, there's a person like that, I feel, in most people's lives. They have that person that's just unending positivity, and for me, that was him in my life. And so that's why we call it the Weatherman, and that's how I relate to that story about what he did. But so this piece, it kind of takes the thing that we first started hearing on the Duke and twists it around in a kind of different way. And but the main thing I want to draw your attention to here is that it actually has the same kind of compositional elements in terms of intervals, and like this major third interval thing, and it keeps it like have this bright sound to it and this bright kind of energy to it. And so that's in the same spot. Like we had changes, like walking changes on the Duke, and then it went to that other section that the drums were eventually on. And then this one kind of follows a similar pattern where it has similar structure. And this was intentional, like to try to create these different settings, again, of the same material in a new way. So I'm going to just jump right into it here. And this is The Weatherman, and it's for my grandfather. This is what I was talking about, that intro. It's similar to a Duke, if you go back and listen. section to be longer, but Jimmy wouldn't play longer. Yeah, there's an interesting little chat happening right now about the little imperfections in there, and how many times do we stop? How many times do we try to get the attack right? And you might hear, a little chipped note here, chipped note there, a little idea, or maybe a little frustration of not exactly executing what was in my brain or somebody else's when they're playing. I think that's just part of it. That's just part of what it makes it feel human to me, and what makes it feel real and not artificial and feel live, and that we're playing together. And to me, that's like the essential part of having a band and playing some music in this jazz realm, is that it's going to be different. It's going to be playing off of one another, and it's going to have that real time energy. So for me, that's like a super important thing. So I leave, little blemishes here and there. And, and somebody said, Jacob Collier said something similar, the imperfections are what make it feel human. It makes it feel right. Every bit of intonation is not going to be correct every bit. I love that you guys can hear the dynamics. Sometimes they get really compressed. People are talking about hearing yeah, exactly. Some of them are compressed. If Ryan Truesdale's still here, he can answer this question. This question is from John. He says, how much influence does a producer have on a project like this? Ryan really served to help bring my vision to life, I think. I mean, he offered solutions when there was problems, and he helped me to shape my vision, I think, and so the producer is there to help guide, and the producer is there to help bring the project to life. It's a collaborative process. Sorry, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but it's a collaborative process, and it's not that, he had all the ideas or I had all the ideas. I came in with all the compositions, and then he helped me tweak them in the studio, maybe make this shorter, make this longer, et cetera, kind of things. But that person in jazz, that producer, is really there to help you manage the day, help you know if you got the take, or if you got enough little pieces of different takes that you can stitch them together in some cases. Or especially the larger the ensemble gets, the more it's necessary to have a producer, because it's just too much to keep control of. There used to be producers on every session, but now people think of a producer as somebody who makes beats, and most musicians don't have the funds to, not only pay the musicians, but to have a producer and everything. But if you can do it, I'll never go back to not having one. After having one for the last couple of records, it's super helpful to have somebody that you trust there to help you make the record happen. I mean, the first two records I did self-producing, and it was very stressful. And so now I offer my services to people because I know how stressful it is, and I try to help fellow musician colleagues with their records as well. Yes, of course, Anthony, I would do a future collab with Chick Corea. Chick Corea is one of my favorite musicians. I would love to play with him in his band, or anytime, or a duo, or just anytime. Yeah, Chick Corea is one of my favorites. So I got to put that on the screen. Yes, the answer is yes, a resounding yes. I know there's been a lot of things coming in the chat, but I don't want to delay too much longer. I want to keep moving through these pieces. I'm going to get Venus going, and I will answer some more of the questions in the chat as we go here. The next character is Venus, and this represents the love interest in your life, whoever that might be. And it's just that romantic interest. It's that unexplainable thing that you're trying to and capture in music. So here we go. This is Venus. As soon as I load it up, resume Venus. Oh, something I should say is that this one actually has 3 bass clarinet parts, 2 bass clarinet parts. So they're not all in the video, which was influenced by Ryan Truesdale's help when we arranged Single Petal from Here and Now, Single Petal of a Rose. I just love the bass clarinet. I love the transparency and the combination of the trombone. Lucas is just a master. There's Venus. And yeah, there's some good moments happening in that tune. And yeah, there are multiple bass clarinets happening, and that's one of my favorite sounds. Multiple bass clarinets and multiple trombones is a good sound, not one that you can hear very often. Yeah, Glenn sometimes looks surprised in the video, but eventually I suppose you get used to doing so many recording sessions with videos there that you forget that it's there, I guess, or that he might want to have, that we were going to have a watch party and that we were going to talk about how he looked surprised. That's funny. Yeah, so that's just kind of mells it all out. And then we're going to move into... we got just a few more tracks left here on the album. And this is another one that's split up on Spotify. It says intro 2, and then it says You'll Never Know the Alternative. And so this one, again, is not a character piece, but a journey piece. If you remember, I'll go back and show you the album artwork one more time real quick. So we had this page, which is the cast, which is all those cast of characters, people. And then we have also the journey, which are these pieces that kind of stitch together our experience in life and kind of as things go forward and as we grow and develop and all of that. And so this next piece is about how a lot of people really have a hard time with making decisions, and they have a hard time committing to one way or the other, always worried about like, what would happen if I did this, or what would happen if I did this? And I just think that the title is everything that you need to know. You'll never know the alternative. You just need to make a decision. And then if it turns out to be the wrong one, you make a different decision in the future and you move towards where you're headed. You know, that's kind of how I've always operated. You know, make a quick decision, jump in, figure it out, and then move on to the next one. So some interesting things about this one is that we definitely, more than some of the other tracks, put some post effects on this one to try to help you to feel the discombobulation of that self conflict at the beginning. They're like, I don't know what to decide. Should I do this? Should I do that? And when I start the recording, you should be able to hear this unsettled nature of the start of the tune. You should be able to hear not necessarily where the time is. You should be able to hear some different combinations of instruments. It's actually trombone playing the lead, and then bass clarinet and bowed bass, like arco bass, playing together as a trio, kind of over the top of this kind of texture that's being created by the piano and the guitar. So to make more sense when we get there. I see a question here. How long did it take to compose the full album? Kind of on and off. I worked on this music for 4 to 6 months probably. And I mean, tweaking things up until the day of the session. And then still, I think the parts have changes that we've made on them that haven't made it back into the score yet. But it's an evolution, you know. Nothing is set in stone, especially not in my band. I want to hear something different, especially even if when you get a new person in the band. I don't want to hear them play exactly like Glenn. I want to hear the new pianist play their stuff over my tune. You know, it's all, to me, jazz is all about musical personalities. So I'm going to start this tune. You can hear this unsettled nature, and then how we make a decision and we go with it. And I'll be in the chat to answer some more questions. I'm definitely seeing a bunch of great questions. So here we go. Here's You'll Never Know the Alternative. figures, again, they're also related to the same figures that we were talking about with weatherman and the duke, compositionally. You can hear all the layers, all the people talking against one another. Backgrounds to me are like still like, oh, should you pick this? Should you pick that? Did you really make the right decision? That's what, to me, that's what those things are. Yeah, Alex's solo out here is really, really great. I'm not going to talk about it. Go again. Did I make the right choice? Am I doing the right thing? That self-doubt. It's back. reminder again, even though we've come this far, those same ideas are still happening, the same compositional ideas. Edwin had a great question. Let me scroll back so I can read what the question says. He said, can you describe the feeling you got when you heard it all coming together over here smiling while listening? So I can only imagine what sort of emotions you were experiencing. Man, yeah, that's why I keep writing music. I think, there's a joy when it comes together just right and it sounds good. You're like, wow, this sounds good, But with this band, at this point in my life, I've been able to figure out what to write, and I can kind of hear it in my head beforehand. This was probably the first record I've ever written where I knew what it was going to sound like before we played it. I know it sounds strange that I would know how those guys were going to play it, but we've been playing together for a long time, so I kind of just knew what it was going to sound like, and how the things were going to blend together, the textures, how to cue it, how to write it. It just was like, after doing it so many times badly and having to learn on the gun, like under the gun, you just start to figure out how to do it, so that's a little easier in the long run. I definitely think this was my favorite record of compositions for sure, and definitely took the most energy compositionally to put together. It's 100%. Anthony says, quick question, was all this filmed last year or this year? We filmed that in June 2019. June 2019 is when the recording session was, and then the record came out February 2020. I appreciate this, Luis. Wow, I'm so glad that you listened so many times. I appreciate that. So I don't know. I'm happy to talk about this forever, but I think that it's just one of my favorite things that I've written and put together, and it just feels good to see the full thing come to fruition. Too bad we didn't get to do the whole tour, but life goes on. So there's a couple more tracks, and this one is pretty special. It's the last major thing, and then we end with a little epilogue. So this last track is called The Guru, but what's not on there is the subtitle, and that's doesn't have all the answers, because I think as we go down this path, we eventually start to seek out, we always have teachers along the way, but we start to seek out these masters that we feel like have mastered it, for lack of a better way to put it, but find someone who has the secret sauce. We always think there's something, if I just do this one thing, then it's going to change everything, and I'm going to be able to access this other realm of musicianship or something like that in my case. But I think there's these people, and I think that the closer you get to them, sometimes what you realize is that they also just have more questions. And I think as you study, Buddhist philosophy or Zen philosophy, you start to see that every question has the question as an answer, and that's kind of what this one is about. That question. Questions and questions and more questions. And so this is called The Guru Does Not Have All the Answers. And I think for me, one of my favorites, The Sorcerer and The Guru, are kind of tied for my favorite of this collection of pieces. So this one wasn't split up or anything. We did this all together. And one interesting kind of fact about this tune was that what Jimmy plays at the beginning of this, it starts with just drums. Something I totally didn't imagine, and I wanted him to just go. I was thinking of something else, and I think what he played was probably better than what I thought of. So this is a great example of where, like, I just want my band to lead the way, and I trust them, and I trust their musicianship to make the right choices, basically. And so I'm gonna pull up this last big tune, and then we have the epilogue after that. That kind of wraps it all together, at least for me, compositionally. But this is The Guru. this. I'm trying to keep all the band on their toes. There's all this written material. Lucas was sitting down. Let's get him up. This is another one of my favorite chords on the album. We play together. As this fades out, I want to have it go straight into the last epilogue. We're more than the sum of our influences. And then we'll come back and chat at the end. It's going to wrap up all those themes. And that's the record. I just didn't want to have to play that small little bit at the very end. I'm so glad you all could be here tonight. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed hearing some of the stories about the album, some of the insight, but that last piece, we're more than the sum of our influences. It kind of just ties up the themes, reorchestrates the intro in a different way. And so it tries to just kind of close it up in it. It's what was talked about in the liner notes, if you go check out the liner notes. And it's that you're not just the sum of your influences. It's the people that influence you. It's the journey that gets you there. And it's an ever-evolving thing. It's not stagnant. It's dynamic. It's real life, and it's growing and evolving. And so, yeah, that was Cast of Characters. I'd love to answer any other questions here, if anybody has any. Anthony, thanks for being here. Juliana, Nathan, Edwin, ECL. Yeah, I see a lot of trombone talk now. If you didn't yet, if you don't have your own copy of the record yet and you wanted to get one, I am doing a little special for those of you that were here, and because I appreciate you being here. I'm trying to get you a CD. If you're looking for CDs or some other stuff, there's T-shirts and there's books and all trombone stuff if you're interested in trombone stuff. But otherwise, it's just for CDs and all that stuff. Let's see. Yeah, Kevin, thank you. I'm glad you say that. It's supposed to wrap it all up. It's supposed to be the capture the overall theme. He's right on there. So I'll just leave this up in the corner. So if anybody needs that code, they can go and grab that. It's only till 11 p.m. Eastern time that'll expire. So if you want to get something, make sure you do that. Edwin, I'm glad that you could check it out. Luis, okay, this is a good question. I'll answer questions. The camera might die soon. I know it'll last 2 hours, but we're almost there. But I'm glad to answer any questions you guys have. So he says, who has influenced the most in your composing? Duke Ellington, I think, is the answer. And the reason I think that is because I write for people and not instruments. Like if Lucas can't be there, I'd rather find another musician that can fill that slot, not just be like, it has to be a person that plays tenor and bass clarinet. I think about, music in terms of people rather than in terms of like instruments or butts and seats, if that makes sense. Who has influenced you the most in your composing recently, as in a more recent than Duke Ellington person? I don't know. I have been in the Gil Evans project and I play his music. Maria Schneider's music is a big influence. I like what a lot of people are writing these days. I think Aaron Parks, and there's a whole crew, Ben Wendell, Joshua Redman. I guess Josh is a little older, but like, Joshua Redman was a big influence. Pat Metheny, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Speak Like a Child. That record is big for me. And Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, the Chick Corea thing. And like I said, I had a big fusion time when I was in high school, so some of that stuff is in there somewhere. And yes, Edwin, bebop for sure. What's next? Oh, yes, I'm on to something else. I'm researching and doing some composing. I've been writing tunes, not totally sure what it becomes yet, but the idea is to write something for an ensemble that is unusual in terms, not that it sounds weird, but just that it's a little bit unusual for jazz, like a percussion ensemble maybe, and a jazz quartet or trio, so like a rhythm section and then plus like a bunch of percussion instruments, just to make stuff, because this whole idea of making things like cinematic and thematic kind of got me kind of excited to write some more music that way. I know like Pat Metheny has done a bunch of stuff in this kind of realm of combining cinematic music and improvisation, and the Aaron Parks record, Invisible Cinema. I don't know. So that's what I'm kind of researching. But right now I'm in a phase. Somebody was asking a question and I answered them in the chat just about that. Like I try to get into phases where I'm composing and I'm just writing, not necessarily knowing what it's going to be for, and just kind of whatever happens that day happens. And I'm kind of in one of those phases right now. Obviously there's no gigs, so might as well be in a writing phase. And I'm just kind of writing stuff. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but that's one project. I'm working on another project, maybe something with strings, maybe a big band. It seems like I'm going to a larger group, and getting this band out on the road. That's a huge priority for me. We have almost 100 songs in our book, over 5 records and 2-3 cover projects that we've done, and I just want to get it out there. If you go and check out, there's like so many videos that we have, that are up on YouTube and stuff. But in terms of live gigs, we haven't gotten the chance to tour that much yet. So that's a big priority. So big priority for me. And that's what's next. For the time being, I'm going to be doing live streams and trying to incorporate more music into the live streams. I've been doing Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. On Thursdays, we do like a trading session for young jazz musicians where we're working on tunes. So that happens every week on Thursday. For now, during this time of 2020, we keep on doing that for the time being on Thursdays at 1 Eastern. And then on Fridays at 1 Eastern, we do a Q&A. Where I talk about all things jazz, trombone, and music business. Somebody asked a question about what it's like to release your own records, because I have a record label called Outside in Music, and we release around 30 to 40 projects a year. So it's not just me; it's a company, and we put out music. But I've done records with other labels, and that's been great. And ultimately, I decided I wanted to have the control over what happens, and I think that I could do it just as well as anyone else. So I decided to take that and run with it. So that's what we're doing right now. And we got 37 or 38 records coming out this year. So it's exciting. Very exciting. How did you settle on the 3B plus? That's a good question. I wanted something bigger than a 508 and I didn't want to play a 547. And that leaves only a few options. I tried a Shires. That was a 525 and ultimately it didn't work out for me. That horn, it just wasn't quite right. I don't know, something about maybe the thickness of the bell or something. It didn't have quite the right sound, so I ended up with the King. And there's not a lot of other options. I think there's a Yamaha option, but I got this one and I started playing it end of 2014. So I've been playing it for like 5 years or so, and it's keeping me happy so far. I still have like a darker sound concept in my head, and I don't know how I'm going to get it, but I'm going to keep working on it. Are you getting Javier Nero's record? I'm putting out Javier Nero's record on Outside in Music. So yes, I've already heard it, and I'll be helping him get it out into the world. It's coming, what did we decide? It's the first Friday in August. That's when Javier Nero's record is coming. Here's an interesting comment. I find that I have to be, I have to be focused and motivated. Without it, it's just kind of depressing. So I've got I always try to keep my hands busy, try to keep things moving along, not dwell too much on what's happening, and just move forward, man, as much as you can. So I'm super happy for everyone to be here. If there's any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or we can see you on Fridays at 1 p.m. Yeah, Outside In we're always kind of growing, trying to do the best we can. So lots of great artists. There's been a bunch of cool releases this year, and it's exciting. And even bigger, some really exciting ones I can't really talk about yet for 2021, but those are starting to come in now because we work on a pretty distant schedule with a label. You got to get like 6-8 months out at least. So yeah, it's exciting. Well, anyway, last chance to go to the store, nickfinzer.store or nickfinzermusic.com, and grab whatever you want, 25% off just tonight and just till 11 p.m. Eastern time or 10 p.m. Central or 8 p.m. Pacific. We got records, posters, old records, new records, trombone stuff, etude books, anything you want, trombone related. It's probably there. And so thank you all for being here. And hopefully maybe we'll do something else like this in a few weeks. I don't know what it would be. Maybe I'll just play all my favorite YouTube videos or something. But I'm really glad you could be here. And we'll see you next time, I hope. Until then, stay safe and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't. And if you've enjoyed this, you could send it to someone. It's going to live on YouTube. So hopefully lots of people will get some insight here, and be on the lookout for that full version of Cast of Characters if you want to try to be able to listen to it and or watch it without interruption. I know we watched it all the way through already, but if you want to kind of check it out without me talking in between. So thanks again, and we will see you next time.